The ship entered the orbit of Prime. It was a blue and silver planet, glowing under twin suns. Luke sat by the observation window. He had never been this far from Earth. Everything was new. The air, the sky, the stars. He was not a soldier. He was not a pilot. He was a linguist. Joined the mission to study alien languages. Many people did not think his job was important, but he believed that words had power, could start wars or stop them. The human team landed near a large city. Tall towers touched the clouds. The streets were filled with strange lights and flying vehicles. Zarans walked with pride. They had blue skin and long hair braided in thick ropes. Their clothes looked like armor, but beautiful and smooth. Luke followed the team into a large hall. It was a training center. The humans were going to work with Zaran cadets. Everyone wore dark uniforms. They trained together. They shared meals. They studied each other. That was where Luke saw her. A Zaran girl with bright silver eyes and long white braids. She stood tall and straight like a statue. Her name was Varela. She looked strong, serious, and a little cold. On the first day, Luke tried to greet her in the trade language. His accent was not perfect. He had learned it from books and screens. Varela looked at him and laughed. It was not a soft laugh. It was sharp and loud. Some of her friends laughed too. Luke felt his face grow warm, but he smiled. He said nothing. She walked away. Her voice echoed in his ears. Her words were not cruel, but the way she said them made it worse. She called his accent strange. He heard it often from others too, but this time it stayed with him. Later that night, Luke sat in his room. He opened his notes. He had been studying the old Zaran language in secret. It was not allowed. The language was sacred. Only a few were allowed to speak it. But Luke had found old songs, symbols, and voices. He listened and repeated them softly. He knew that language was more than words. It showed who you were. It showed respect. He wanted to learn it not to impress, but to connect. Days passed. The team trained hard. There were fights and mistakes. Some Zarans thought humans were weak. Some humans thought Zarans were cold. Varela and Luke kept crossing paths. She often gave him a strange look. Not angry, but not friendly either. One day, Luke stood in the cafeteria. He waited in line. Behind him, he heard Varela speaking to her friend in her native tongue. She spoke fast and smooth. But Luke understood. She was talking about humans, about how they tried too hard. He did not turn. He stayed quiet. But in his mind, he repeated the words, matched them with his notes. He learned more. That night he practiced again. The sounds were hard. Some words had no match in human speech, but he kept going. He wanted to speak it right. The next morning, there was a big meeting. All the leaders were there. The translator machine broke during the talk. No one understood each other. There was tension. One Zaran elder said something in their language. It was not kind. It was about the humans. Luke stood up. His heart beat fast. He looked at the elder and spoke in the Zaran language. The words were slow, but clear. He said they came in peace. He said they respected the old ways. He asked for trust. The room became silent. Every eye turned to him. Varela's eyes widened. She did not laugh. She froze. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Luke sat down. He did not smile, did not feel proud. He only hoped the words reached the heart. That moment changed everything. But it all began with a laugh and a voice. After the meeting, everyone talked about Luke. Some were surprised, some were confused. Many Zarans looked at him differently now. He had spoken with calm and respect. He had used a language that was not meant for outsiders. But he did not break any law. He showed care in every word. Varela stayed quiet. She kept thinking about that moment. She had mocked his voice before. Now he had spoken her language better than some of her own people. She did not understand how he had learned it. She wanted to know. That evening, she waited outside the research room. When Luke came out, she stopped him. He looked at her with the same soft eyes, but he said nothing. She asked him how he learned her language. He paused, then said he listened. He read, tried. She asked why. He said he wanted to understand, not just talk. Varela walked with him in silence. She looked at him again. He was not tall, not strong, but he was patient. He watched more than he spoke. That was rare among her people. The next day, a new task was given to the joint team. They had to work on a shared project. It was a translator device. The old one had failed. Now they had to create one that used not only words but feelings. It was a hard task. Many believed it would not work. Emotions were hard to translate. Luke and Varela were placed in the same group. She did not like it at first, but soon she saw his way of working. He asked questions no one thought of, gave small ideas that helped big problems, listened when others spoke. At first, others did not listen to Luke, but after what he did in the meeting, they began to hear him. Varela started to respect him, even if she did not show it with words. One night, they worked late. Everyone had left the lab. Luke stayed back to study the sound patterns. Varela came back to check the data and saw him still there. She asked why he never gave up. He said he liked puzzles, said language was like a door and he wanted to open every one. She sat beside him. They talked for a long time. She shared a story from her home. He listened, then told one from Earth. They laughed. It was the first time she laughed with him, not at him. In the days that followed, the device started to take shape. It was slow, but it worked. It used voice tone, pauses, and eye movement. It turned emotion into sound. It was not perfect, but it was new. The leaders visited the lab. They saw the progress. They were pleased. They said if this worked, peace talks would be easier. Trust would grow. Varela and Luke became a team. They still had different views, but they learned from each other. She taught him more of her language. He showed her how humans use music to share feelings. They added music notes into the translator. It made the messages more clear. Some people did not like the change. A few Zarans still believed humans were weak. Some humans thought Zarans were cold, but slowly, opinions started to change. One success led to another. One morning, a small group of cadets from both sides stood outside the lab. They watched as the translator worked between two children. One human, one Zaran. The children laughed and smiled. The device caught the feeling and shared it. That moment touched many hearts. People began to believe that maybe peace was not just a word. Maybe it could be real. Luke did not want fame. He only wanted people to talk to each other without fear. Varela, who once laughed at his voice, now stood beside him. She spoke of respect, not shame. Their journey was not over, but it had begun, and it was stronger than before. The peace project moved forward. The translator was tested in more places. It helped in markets, meetings, and even hospitals. Many people now believed in its power. Luke and Varela worked side by side. They were no longer just workers. They had become partners. But not everyone liked what was happening. Some people in both groups felt the change was too fast. A few Zaran officers thought Varela had lost her pride. They said she was too friendly with humans. On the human side, a few officers whispered that Luke shared too much with aliens. They did not trust the new closeness. One afternoon, while testing the device at a spaceport, an explosion rocked the area. Alarms rang. Smoke filled the air. Luke and Varela rushed to help the injured. They saw broken machines and scattered supplies. No one was killed, but many were hurt. The leaders called for a meeting. They believed it was not an accident. Someone had planted the blast. A warning message was found, written in both Earth and Zaran languages. It said the alliance was fake. It warned both sides to stay apart. People became afraid. Meetings were canceled. Trade talks were delayed. Soldiers returned to their old groups. The peace efforts began to slow down. Luke sat alone in the lab that night. He looked at the translator. It had helped so many, but now it sat quiet. Varela entered without a word. She looked tired. She had spoken to her own people, and many had turned away. She asked Luke if it was all for nothing. He shook his head, said change takes time, said the blast was meant to scare them. If they gave up now, then fear had won. Varela agreed. She said fear had always been the true enemy. She asked if he still had the list of shared words. He nodded. She pulled a chair beside him. Together, they worked all night. They updated the translator. They added new symbols. They made it safer, stronger, and harder to hack. They also added a new feature. It could now detect lies based on tone and face movement. It would help leaders trust each other. A week later, another meeting was called. This time it was in a protected area. Soldiers stood guard. People came with worry, but they came. Luke stood before them. He showed the new device. Let it speak for him. His words were calm. His message was hope. The translator sent the feeling with his words. The crowd listened. The device worked. Then Varela stepped forward. She spoke in English. Her words were not perfect, but her meaning was clear. She said she once laughed at a voice, but now she stood with that voice. She believed in peace. Some still looked unsure, but others nodded. Few even clapped. After the meeting, a young Zarin cadet came to Luke. She said she wanted to learn human speech. She asked if he would teach her. Luke smiled. He said yes. That night, Luke and Varela stood outside. The stars above were quiet. But between them, there was no silence. There was trust. They knew the road ahead would not be easy. But they were not alone anymore. The first step had been made. And sometimes that is all it takes. In another part of the base, someone watched them through a screen. The person turned off the monitor and spoke into a hidden link. He said the project lives. Then he disappeared into the dark. The story was not over, but hope had a voice now. It spoke in many tongues. Tensions calmed after the second meeting. The new translator was a success. More people from both sides began to use it. Words were easier to understand, but it was the emotions behind the words that changed everything. Smiles now had meaning. Sadness could be felt. Lies were harder to hide. Luke and Varela became known across the station. They were called bridge builders. Some praised them. Others still kept their distance. But every day someone new came to ask a question, share a word, or test the translator. One day a strange signal reached the station. It came from outside the system. It was short and broken. The message was not clear, but it sounded like a warning. The leader sent ships to search. Luke was called to help decode the signal. He listened to the sound over and over. It was not Zarin. It was not from Earth either. Varela joined him. Together, they found parts of the message that sounded like a call for help. A ship had gone missing. It was a joint ship, carrying both Zaeron and human engineers. No one had heard from them in 3 days. The peace project was in danger. If the ship had been taken or destroyed, both sides would blame each other. The leaders chose Luke and Varela to join the search. They were trusted by both groups. A small team left the station and followed the signal trail. The journey took a full day. At last, they found the lost ship. It was floating near a dead moon. The ship looked damaged but not destroyed. There were no signs of life from outside. The team entered with caution. Inside, they found signs of struggle, broken panels, burn marks, and scattered tools. But there was something strange. There was no sign of a fight between the crew. It looked like they had been attacked from outside. In the control room, Luke found a small device. It was still working. It held a recording from the captain. The message was short. The captain said they were under attack by an unknown group. He warned of a hidden enemy that wanted to break the peace between Zarins and humans. The team sent the message back to the station. The leaders listened with silence. Now they knew the truth. Someone was trying to turn them against each other. Back on the station, fear grew again. Some still blamed the other side. But the voice of the captain helped calm many. He had spoken clearly, with no hate. Varela and Luke gave a short talk in the common hall. They reminded everyone why the peace project began. They said enemies fear what they do not understand. He said the answer was not to break apart, but to stand closer. The station began to change again. Security was increased, but so was trust. Teams mixed together to protect the base. Old guards were replaced with new ones trained to work as one unit. Varela took charge of training the new joint patrols. Luke worked on a warning system that could catch signals like the one from the missing ship. They stayed busy, but they never forgot to talk, to share, and to listen. One night, Luke found Varela standing alone near the observatory. She was watching the stars. He asked what she was thinking. She said she never thought she would care so much. He nodded. He said neither did he. They stood in silence for a while. Then she asked him if he would return to Earth one day. Said maybe, but only when the work was done. She smiled just a little. Then she said maybe she would visit Earth one day too. Their mission was not over. Danger was still out there. But so was hope. And hope was stronger now because it was shared. Far away, in a dark ship hiding behind a gas giant, a voice spoke. The plan had failed. The ship had survived. The voice said they would try again, but this time, it would not be so easy. The light from the stars touched both the station and the dark ship. One stood for peace, the other for fear. The next move would decide much. The station prepared for anything. The warning was clear. A hidden enemy still watched from the dark. But now, the people on the station were more ready. Humans and Zarans stood together. They trained, worked, and shared everything. Luke continued his work on the early warning system. He added layers of sound filters to catch even the smallest signals. Varela helped test every change. They spent long nights in the lab. He spoke less now, but understood more. One morning, the alert system beeped. A signal had been caught. It was weak but strange. Luke and Varela followed it. It came from inside a drifting cargo ship. The ship had no ID. It was moving toward the station slowly. A small team was sent to board the ship. Luke and Varela joined them. The team moved through the empty halls of the cargo ship. It was cold and quiet. Then they found it. A room filled with old parts and strange tech. In the middle was a device. It was sending out a fake message. Luke studied it. The message copied human and Zaran signals. It was built to confuse, to create mistrust. The team realized the ship was left there on purpose. It was a trap, not to attack, but to break peace. Back on the station, leaders met again. They now had proof that someone wanted the Alliance to fail, but no one knew who the enemy was. They could be from another planet, or from inside one of their own groups. Luke and Varela suggested one thing. They would send a message, not in code, not in threat, but a message in voice, in truth. One that used the translator to share both words and feelings, one that showed unity. The message was written in both languages. Luke recorded it first, then Varela. The translator turned their voices into something more. It carried the weight of meaning. It carried trust, pain, and hope. The message was sent across all channels, reached trade ships, patrol groups, even far outposts. The message was simple. We are not perfect, but we are united. We will not be turned against each other. Days passed, no attacks came. But they knew the enemy was still out there waiting, watching. One day a ship approached the station. It was not from Earth, not from Zaora. It was old, rusted, and slow. It asked for help. The leaders were cautious. But Luke said they should listen. The ship docked. A small group came out. They were from a third race, not known to most. They said their people had once worked in secret. They made machines for others. They had built the trap ship, but not by choice. They were forced. Now, they wanted to break free. They had heard the message. It had reached even their hidden world. They wanted peace too. The station took them in. Not everyone trusted them, but it was a start. Luke and Varela helped them learn the translator. The new race had a strange way of speaking, but the device worked. One night, the station held a gathering. For the first time, 3 different groups stood in the same room. No one shouted, no one fought. They shared stories, food, and music. Varela stood and spoke. Her voice was firm. She said peace was not a gift. It was a choice, made every day. Then Luke spoke. He said he once was laughed at for how he spoke. But now, the same voice had built a bridge. The people clapped. Some cried. The translator echoed their feelings. Even without words, people understood. Far in the dark, the hidden enemy watched. Their plan had failed. They had tried fear, lies, and tricks. But voices had been stronger. They turned off their screens. The enemy was still out there, but they were quiet. Back on the station, life moved forward. Children from both sides played together. Teams trained in the same halls. And in a quiet lab, Luke and Varela worked on the next version of the translator, one that could carry even more than words. Peace had not come easy, but it had come. It's not because of power, not because of weapons, but because one person chose to listen, and one person chose to stop laughing and start understanding.